Welcome back to Inner Peace, Better Health, the space where inner calm meets deeper understanding and where spirituality isn't something far away or mysterious. It is something you get to live, feel, and embody every single day. I am your host Nazish, and today's conversation is one I know many of you have been quietly curious about, maybe even feeling called towards, but weren't sure how to step into. We are talking about Akashic Records, spiritual gifts, and meditation. Not from a you must be enlightened perspective, but from a grounded human, you are already more intuitive than you think. My guest today is Stephanie Potter, someone who beautifully bridges the world. After more than 20 years in corporate America, Stephanie followed a deeper pull towards spirituality and self growth. Over the last decade, she's trained in Akashic Records, soul reading, and astrology, human design, numerology, reiki, and more. But what truly sets her apart is a belief that there is no guru energy here. Stephanie sees herself as a bridge, translating spiritual insight in a clear, loving, relatable way, reminding us that every single one of us has access to inner wisdom, truth, and spiritual gifts, even if we don't fully trust it yet. So, if you have ever wondered, am I intuitive? Why do I feel drawn to spiritual ideas but still want logic? Or how do I connect without losing myself? This episode is for you. So let's dive in. Welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Hey, Nazish, thank you so much for having me. Good evening. What a wonderful intro. I am humbled.
Amazing. So, Stephanie, many people hear that words Akashic Records and immediately think that sounds fascinating but also intimidating. How do you explain the Akashic Records in a way that feels grounded or safe for everyday people?
I love that opener. So for me, I would look at it two ways. Some people are very scientific minded, right? So they want we'll go with the quantitative. So we look at the science of it. And so I'm not going to begin to explain that to everybody, but where I will point you is in the direction of Irvin Laszlo, who's done work in the quantum physics of the Akashic records. So absolutely Google him. If you are, scientific and you want to go to quantum physics, I would point you there. The other way to look at it is kind of the qualitative, and we look at it from a soul or a spiritual perspective. And that's where I'm going to come in. And the easiest way to describe it is the way to vision it is an energetic library of everything that has ever existed, currently exists, and will exist. And that is a bit overwhelming. But if we take it down to the idea of we know that matter and energy cannot be destroyed, we know that there are significant things. So anything that has energy, an event, a person, a plant, anything like that. And so the Akashic Records holds the imprints of all of those things that have ever happened. Where I break it down a little bit more, because that's kind of overwhelming, right? So where I break it down more is I look at it from a soul or a higher self perspective. And so whether you believe we incarnate once, meaning we come down to this earth in human form, or we incarnate many times, right? Reincarnation. I look at it as the energy of your soul record. And so I'll pause there because I know that was kind of a lot.
Amazing. That was a very beautiful explanation. So, what surprises people most when they first access or learn about the Akashic Records?
Well, first, let's get over it's kind of a big idea, right? So we're thinking about, wow, there might be a blueprint that my soul or my souls, like souls' lives, my incarnation lives, there's a blueprint of like why I came down here, or I can access my past lives. And that's kind of mind blowing, right? So there's a little bit of belief that has to go with that because it sounds very much like we've created it out of nowhere, very magical. What I do think is really surprising to people is when they are able to feel their own energy. So when I work with people and I do readings, I open up their energetic Akashic record with them. and they start to feel the energy flowing through them, or they wake up the next morning and they've had the most incredible dreams or downloads, things like that. So I think when people actually feel the physical energy of it, that really wakes them up. But what I would say individually, if you're not working with somebody like me, because I definitely encourage everyone, and would let you know that you have access to your own Akashic record, just by being human and being sovereign. And so I think what people find out is that there is a place when they feel very in a transitional point in their life, or they're not sure what they should be doing, or they don't feel like their heart's in it, or they're just not feeling a lot of joy, that you can tap into and kind of get yourself aligned with what your soul came here to do. And I think that's really powerful in today when we have so many different things going on around us. Coming down and feeling really aligned with what you're here to do, why you came to incarnate, I think is powerful, because unfortunately not all of us get to be in jobs or work experience that feels like our highest and best self. And so what I would say is I think there's ways to get to our highest and best self that don't include our jobs. And so I think that tapping into your Akashic record and finding more about who you are at your core and your heart, when you take off all of the levels of responsibility and time and culture and family, figuring out who you are at your core, I think is a beautiful alignment. And so I think people are really surprised when they get aligned with really what they came here to do, because I think we often find ourselves on paths that satisfy what we think is the next right step based on maybe our family, our friends, our community, the responsibilities around us, time, money, all of those different constraints, as opposed to who we are aligned in our heart.
I love it because it really reframes spirituality as something supportive and not exclusive of or overwhelming. And it is less about unlocking secrets and more about remembering what we already know. It's absolutely beautiful the way you put it.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think there's empowerment, and where I think we're going to see kind of everyone going in the next few years is, for a very long time, we found religions and spirituality that say the answers are outside of us, in a God, in um, a leader of a religion, or in a book, or that sort of thing. And my honest belief is those things are wonderful, but I also believe the answers you seek are inside of you, and that each of us is connected to a higher power, or whatever you believe that to be. So instead of looking for answers everywhere else, there's a way to go inside, and working with the records helps you do that.
Exactly. It's just so beautiful and something so unique, to be really honest. Uh, You often say everyone has spiritual gifts. Even people who swear they are not spiritual. What do those gifts usually look like in
Oh my gosh, I love this question. I swear I didn't pay you to say it. I like to say that everyone has, and we say the term spiritual gifts, but to me, gifts even sounds a little bit limiting, right? Because how could everybody afford gifts and that sort of thing? It sounds like some people maybe get it and some don't. And so I'd love to say spiritual abilities, or spiritual senses. We all have senses. Most of us can, feel something or see something. Obviously there are exceptions to that rule. But what I think is that spiritual abilities, or what we know as spiritual gifts, I'd like to tell everyone that everybody has them. These are extra senses that we can start to develop, each person. And so the spoiler alert is that everybody has the ability to kind of hone in on these senses. And some of them, people, we hear stories of people just waking up and being able to see spirit or hear spirit, or they can see past lives or things like that. And those are wonderful. But they are not as common as people that, start to practice and put time into it and find out what their spiritual abilities are over time. And so the fun part of it and the hard part of it is figuring out what your spiritual abilities are. So just like some of us can play the piano better than others, the same thing comes to spiritual abilities. So whether you can talk to people that have passed, whether you can have precognition and kind of know things that are going to happen, or psychic senses, all of these things we contain. It's just that we each have our own special way of doing it. It's just like in life how we have special abilities, where some of us might be a better writer or a better runner, or better at math, whatever that looks like. The same thing applies when we look at spiritual senses. And so to me, what I love to tell everybody is that they have intuition, and that's the precursor to spiritual abilities. And spiritual abilities, again, sounds like a big term, but it's really about how are we using our senses above what we already are used to using. So we look at things like claircognizance, clairseeing. We've heard about clairvoyance, that's clear seeing. So I can get deeper into that, but I want to pause here and see if that makes sense to you.
It does make sense to me, to be really honest, and I'm pretty sure it is making sense to a lot of my listeners also right now because you've put it so beautifully.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Yeah, I think, sometimes on part of my path, it's like, man, I would really love to be a medium. And that's what I wanted when I was younger, because I had seen mediums that were really in their integrity that could help heal people. Where like, you could go to like a talk therapy, which I do and I believe in, but you could go to that for 2 years. But somebody that sees a true medium could go for one session and have like the same breakthrough that they could have had or the same feeling as they could have had in 2 years of talk therapy. And again, I go to talk therapy very much for it. But the way that spirit works is they didn't just give me mediumship, right? And that wasn't the first gifts for me that really came out. I had to really like work through it. But, we feel like maybe we aren't chosen, so therefore we don't have these abilities because we didn't wake up one day with mediumship. And God bless the people that are able to do that. That's wonderful. But I think what we need to learn and everybody needs to know is that you guys all have spiritual abilities or spiritual gifts. It's just figuring out what they are and taking the time to do it. And some people will and some people won't, just like some people learn to play the piano and some people don't.
Very well, very well. I get it. I get it. It's just nice. Like, it's so good to know this. So, how can someone tell the difference between intuition and overthinking? This is something that I know many people would want to know.
Yeah, this is a great question as well. What I would say is that intuition usually is very simple. It's like depending on kind of your energetic type, it might feel like a gut feeling, it might feel like a warm feeling in your body. But usually, intuition isn't going to be a long line of sentences. It's not going to have anything that has shame or blame or negativity. It's going to come from a place that is very pure and very simple. So it could be something as simple as turn right here, or this is where you want to go for dinner, things like that. And so again, yeah, it's always loving. It's always going to be about um, from a loving and place of light. So anytime we hear anything that feels like ego or doubt, that's going to be your brain and your ego trying to protect you, again, from a place of love. But we know that intuition usually speaks very calmly, very shortly, and always from a place of love.
Beautiful. So beautifully put. And the real distinction is so huge because so many of us doubt ourselves right at the moment we are actually, tuning in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to learn to trust your intuition. And so when people look for like starting to train with spiritual abilities, we generally start with intuition. And sometimes it's as simple as figuring out what a yes and a no feels like in your body and not in your brain. And that's where we learn to like use the intuition of the body, because a lot of times your body is smarter than your brain, because your brain and your ego is there to protect you, right? And that was wonderful when we were running from tigers, but if you're not running from tigers every day, your brain, again, still wants to protect you in the same way. And so when you look into the wisdom of the body and you start to feel, what does a yes feel like in my body? And what does a no feel like? Letting your body take over and start to get in there into the wisdom there helps with building up intuition. So these are simple like exercises that we start to do when we start to train people for spiritual abilities.
Exactly. And you have spent so many years in corporate America before stepping fully into this work. So, how did your spiritual awakening coexist with logic, structure, and ambition instead of competing with them?
Well, what I would say is that I'm still have one foot in corporate America, slowly moving. One day I'd love to do this full time, but I also really wanted to make sure that I had that I built up my clientele and my business in an organic way. So I would say I still work a 9 to 5 in a very corporate, very masculine energy America. But then at night on the weekends is when I'm working in this. And what I would say is, as I make the shift, and as I stepped into actually starting my business and doing this work, but more importantly, being just kind of serving the Akashic Records like I am now as far as education, it takes time. I think that for me, that shift became personal. One time I got laid off and I had a lot of time, so it gave me more time to work with this. In some ways, I think it might have been divinely happening, a divine happening to allow me to kind of sit down and say, okay, I do want to start a business and become, I don't know that subject matter expert. I don't think you can be one on the Akashic Records, but speak for them, and serve them. And so for me, I think it was a conscious decision, things that were already happening in my life. But me getting a little bit closer, and as we talked about earlier, listening to what is it that my heart, my soul, really higher self wants to come down here to do. And for me, that was like working with people and being a channel. For me, some of that means that, I have to serve to me spirit and really step away, let even my ego step away so that I can bring through the messages to help people. And to me, I think that's a really powerful thing. But I also think that I'm here to talk about the records and get more people engaged with their own, as well as the abilities that we've talked about intuitively and spiritually. And so for me, as I, like I said, still got a foot in corporate America, I like to say that that is my day job, but my calling is really the work that I do here. And so slowly building that so that I can do that full time one day.
Amazing. I really hope you get to do it full time someday because it is such a beautiful thing and y- it just sorts so many things for so many people.
I think so. I really hope that, sometimes when people meet with me, a lot of times it's because they're in a transitional period of their life. And I
Mm-hmm.
like to say, and I know that I've definitely experienced it, sometimes a new chapter starts for you in your life that you chose. So you decided to find a new job, you bought a new house, you started a new relationship, whatever that looks like. But sometimes chapters start that you did not choose. And so something ended or something started that you did not choose, so whatever that looks like. And so I think that's enough to throw anybody. And so a lot of times I come in and I'm able to work with people to help them either understand what's going on, help them figure out what work they need to do to figure out where they want to go and how they get a little bit closer to joy, happiness, and fulfillment. And I think that's kind of what we're all here to do. I believe we're all here to create in this world. But a lot of times we feel like everything is happening to us instead of for us, or that we have the ability to create for ourselves. We're just trying to get through every day and it feels like life is happening to us. And so the work that we do and that I'm doing, even my own personal self, is to figure out how we become a creator of our own existence and have a play out how our life is and what we want for our individual lives.
Amazing. So, what advice would you give someone who feels spiritually curious but fears it won't fit into their real life?
I like this question too. I think that it's kind of like we talk about like pulling the thread, like if you have like something that was knit and you pull the thread, it starts to unravel. And I think that's like I encourage people to do what feels the most comfortable to them. Meaning if you hear about maybe you hear about oracle cards 4 times in 2 weeks and you have spent a year and you've never heard about oracle cards, it could be the universe telling you, hey, check out oracle cards. If it could be like, hey, I'm actually really interested in biohacking or quantum physics, I mean, or anything metaphysical. I always encourage people to think about how you like to take in information. So, do you like to listen to podcasts like this? Do you like to watch videos? Do you like to read books? What does that look like for you? Do you like to attend events? And so I always tell people find time in your day, even if it's driving to work, even if it's walking the dog, whatever that looks like, to start to figure out where you feel comfortable. I like to say when I was just taking in information for about 15 years before I started actually practicing this stuff, I was like a spiritual Roomba. So I would be 3 months in astrology, Western astrology, and then I like Vedic astrology. So I get into that. And then I'd Roomba hit the wall, go a different direction, and be interested in numerology. And then be bouncing back, and then maybe I'm back to Western astrology. And so I really took the limits off, allowing myself to just be okay with rooming, so to speak. So hitting a wall, pivoting and going a different direction. So I think it's if we find where we're already having, either getting nods from the universe or where your interest lies, but then also not making it feel like another job, right? Like I must become the best at this, or I must read every single book, or I must do every single practice, or whatever that looks like. I also would say that there's a lot of things out there that are free. When we look at YouTube or Udemy or different places that are either free or quite cheap, we don't always have to go to the $2,000 spiritual retreat. Maybe we buy the book used on Amazon for, $4. And so I would always tell people, don't let money or time get in your way, but allow yourself to be curious like you were when you were a child.
That is something really nice. I feel like you should be curious. Curiosity keeps you alive.
That's exactly it. It's, I think one of the things that when we're children, we look back and we're like, oh, we had all this time and no responsibilities. And somehow we would have times when we were bored. And as an
Yeah.
adult, we would give anything to go back to a time like that, or you might have felt bored or you had all that time and space. And so
Yeah.
I think it is allowing to find the things that light us up. Because there are so many places, again, where we have responsibilities or we lose energy during the day doing something we're not passionate about. We need to find those sparks of energy. Even it's the silliest thing, if you decided that you like, I don't know, origami because you never learned it in summer camp, or maybe it's that you want to learn more about the stars. So you go out to like, somewhere where they have telescopes set up and they're doing dark sky. I think it's just finding the time and then saying, like, these are all the things, but also taking off the limits around, oh my gosh, I've decided I want to do this and now I must be the best at it. It's really the ability to go in, be curious, and allow yourself to be in a little bit of wonder, even as an adult.
Yeah. And this is such an important reminder that spirituality doesn't ask us to abandon who we are. It asks us to integrate. And that really makes it very too much better for a lot of people.
Absolutely. I think too that I like to remind myself and remind the people that I work with is that we are built like humans are made of the same things that are the stars and the sun. And so, like, it is incredible that we are walking around on this earth filled with water, being built of the same thing as the stars. And, like, what a miracle that we forget about. And so, I think just that to me blows me away, right? And that wonder right there, let alone the everyday things that we can tend to chase. The other thing I would say, just as I'm thinking about it, is if you do go online and you're on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, any of those things, what are the things that you're interested in? Is it travel? Is it cooking? Is it crafts? Like, what does that look like for you? Again, finding those things that you're already spending your time kind of watching, and that's where you can also follow that down, whether it's a spiritual or otherwise. The closer you get to that spiritual, that curiosity, the wonder, the excitement that you can bring back into your body, that beautiful energy, the closer to where you came here to do and who your soul is, you'll be.
So, for someone listening right now who feels disconnected, unsure, or searching for answers outside themselves, what would you want them to know about their inner wisdom?
I would want them to know that all of the answers can be found inside of themselves, but they have to listen. And so I think that we do a really great job at talking. So maybe we pray or we talk about what we want or we don't want in our lives. But I think the listening part is where a lot of us don't spend time. And so what I would say is if you pray or you talk about things you want or you don't want, that's, talking to a higher power. But how often do we listen? And so things like meditation and all forms of meditation, and there are so many, are ways for us to listen. Sometimes, it could be just walking, listening to music, but clearing your head, and letting that kind of information wash across you. For some people, it's sitting down with a blank journal and allowing themselves to just write about whatever that looks like. Because I believe that our heart and our mind are consistently, as well as, our higher self and our team and spirit, whatever your beliefs are, trying to help us connect to, what kind of is going to bring us our own truth. And so I think you have to set yourself the space and time to do that, but also know that it may not come right away, right? These kind of things, they take a little bit of time. So maybe you will sit and get one word. Maybe you will listen to your heart and close your mind, and you will do a guided meditation and you might get an answer, or you might meet a spirit guide. But it doesn't come always every answer that you're looking for. Part of the journey to get the answers is what you are looking for. And so I think that for people, if they can figure out a way, whatever works best for them, or try some different kinds of ways to get quiet and allow themselves to receive as opposed to speak what they want, they might find a connection. I hope they would find a connection with their next steps and or the answers that they seek.
Absolutely beautiful, and I feel like this is such an empowering note, especially in a world that constantly tells us to look outward for validation.
That's exactly it. We think about all of the things that we do on a daily basis, how many blogs or things we read online, the messages that we get on our phones, the different sites that we're scrolling, all of that. To me, that all opens up tabs, so to speak, in your consciousness. And so when you can shut those down and you don't have them kind of blaring in the background, it's a little bit easier to reach both the conscious and the subconscious. So finding that quiet space, connecting with nature, not watching the TV, not listening to the radio, not watching the news. That's when a lot of these messages are going to come through more clearly. And then obviously, as you get into a practice more, um, you know, ongoing and whatever, it'll be a little bit easier to kind of find the answers that you're looking for. But to start, it's about getting quiet.
Yeah, I believe it, and it is so beautiful. So, before we close, here's I just want to ask you that how our listeners can connect with you if you want to know more about your work and more about these Akashic reawakening and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to point people towards my website. I've got a bunch of free materials. And so when I say free, it just means that you put in your email and you get free. I don't send anything out. So you're not signing up for a newsletter or anything like that right now. But some materials that I would point you towards, one, I've got a PDF that I created that has a bunch of links on it about the Akashic Records. So I've got three different books, three different podcast episodes, three YouTube videos, and I think three articles. So depending on how you like to take in information, it will link you directly to all these free materials. The books, of course, would be available for purchase, but they're there. The second thing I have is a free meditation quiz. So I hinted a little bit about finding the right kind of meditation for you. And I think it's really important because a lot of us have tried to sit down in a quiet room and close our eyes, and it didn't work. And so I like to say that there are so many different kinds of meditation. And so I created a quiz that has 5 or 6 questions that you click into, and then it gives you the top 2 kinds of meditation that you can try, as well as for each of those kinds of meditation, 3 different sample meditations that are on a free app called Insight Timer. It is not my voice. I don't have a voice made for meditation, but these are professional people that have created these meditations. And so I think it's really neat as a way to kind of figure out what might be the right kind of meditation for you and then listen to free samples of meditations that you can access. So I think that's a really beautiful thing that I've created for people to help them. I do one-on-one readings, but I'm just opening up my books in January. So if people are interested, they want to connect with me or have a reading, that's absolutely available on there. But what I'm doing here is I'm really trying to help people connect with themselves, their own spiritual gifts, and help them on their walk at the beginning.
Amazing. I will make sure to include all these details into the show notes, and I will check out the kind of meditation I can do as well. This
Yeah,
sounds really interesting.
yeah. The name of my company is Alcyone Akasha, and I will not make anybody try to figure out how to spell that. But you can go to my website at stephanienicolepotter.com. Again, that's Stephanie Nicole Potter. I don't know if it was wise to use my government name, but there it is. And you guys, it'll take you right over to my website to be able to access these different pieces.
Amazing. I will put all these information into the show notes, and I hope many, many listeners can connect with you through this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. I hope that I was able to bring any kind of wisdom to your community. I appreciate it.
Yes, definitely. So before we close, here's a gentle invitation for you, our listeners. Tonight or sometime this week, sit quietly for just 3 minutes, no expectations, no pressure to get it right. Place a hand on your heart and ask yourself one simple question. What do I already know that I have been ignoring? No forcing answers, just notice what comes up. A word, a feeling, or even silence, that alone is a connection. If today's conversation resonated with you, take a moment to reflect not on becoming someone new, but on remembering who you already are. Share this episode with someone who's quietly awakening. Leave us a review if this space supports your journey, and keep choosing inner peace because better health always begins with it. Until next time, this is Nazish, and you have been listening to Inner Peace, Better Health. Stay curious, stay gentle, and stay trust your inner voice.